Welcome back to another episode of the Women and Money Cafe. We have got a packed sofa today. It is really busy in the cafe. So I am ably assisted by Michelle. Good afternoon, Michelle.
Good afternoon. Lovely to see you, Julie.
You too. Next to Emily on the sofa, we've got Emily.
Hi.
Oh, and very exciting news. We've got a new addition to the team. The wonderful Jennifer O'Neill has joined us. So good afternoon and welcome, Jennifer.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. Now, as if that's not exciting enough, okay, we've got a special guest today. And I'm kind of excited about this because you know how you all have someone that you look up to? I maybe should have warned you about this before. Like, we all have our role models, don't we? And the people that we aspire to and that we look to. So I've got one of mine in the cafe today. How lucky am I? So we are joined today by the wonderful Ruth Sturkey. So good afternoon, Ruth.
Julie, thank you very much. I wasn't expecting that wonderful intro. Thank you ever so much. That's very kind. It's good to be here.
All right, thank you for joining us. So, for people that aren't familiar with Ruth, so Ruth is in the same profession as us, but she's a little bit more than just that. Ruth has had a very long, distinguished career, just littered with achievements. And right now, I think the thing you're probably best known for is you are now the chair of the Institute for Financial Wellbeing. I've got that right, haven't I?
You have got that right. Yeah.
Right, I nearly stumbled over my words there. I thought it would be really good to get Ruth to come and join us, okay? Because this phrase, financial well-being, gets thrown around all over the place. What does it actually mean? Where are we going with that? And oddly enough, over the last couple of weeks, on a few occasions, people have asked me what a financial plan is, probably because I've told them that's what I do. And their assumption is that it's spreadsheets and numbers and things. And then I have to explain, actually, no, that's the last bit and maybe the least important bit. It's all the conversation we have before we get to the numbers is what really builds a financial plan. And I think that really ties in nicely with the work that you do, Ruth. So, for the benefit of the listeners that don't know you, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all?
No, thank you, Julie. Yeah, you're absolutely right, Julie. And as much as I've been in and around financial services for many years now, through many different incarnations, as you rightly say, at the moment, I'm the chair of the Institute for Financial Wellbeing, which is a subject that I care very passionately about, which we'll come back to, I'm sure. Prior to that, I had my own financial planning business, myself and two co-founders, which we grew for about 10 years and we're hugely proud of it. We had a great time building the business, having some great clients, and I think kind of helping shape aspects of the profession as it is today. We merged that business into a larger firm called Paradigm Norton about 5 years ago. And I've spent the last couple of years, so I'm doing some non-exec work now with the firm that I merged the business into, Paradigm Norton, which is a great and growing firm. They're employee owned and they're also a B corporation, which means that they have a legal obligation to consider people, planet and profit in all the decisions that they make. And I do some coaching of other female financial planners. And I thought I'd switch my phone off. So let's just switch that off right now. And I'm also, chairing the IFW, and I speak at various industry events, typically around the subject of financial planning and more recently financial well-being. So I think that's pretty much what I'm up to these days, Julie.
All right. Okay, well, that's potted history. Thank you very much for that. So let's dive straight in then with the work that you do at the Institute for Financial Wellbeing. Can I start by maybe asking you what sparked you to get involved with it?
So when I was a practicing financial planner and sitting in front of clients and helping them, asking them big questions and helping them determine what a good life was going to look like for them, I thought I was a bloody good financial planner, to be perfectly honest. And so I'd sit in front of a client, we'd ask them various questions. They would give me some answers. And a typical question I would say to somebody was, so what does money mean to you? And I would sit and wait for what became almost typical answers, which are brilliant answers, such as freedom, security, choice, the ability to decide you're going to bugger off and leave your job or whatever it might be. And so I used to get that, what was quite good, I think, responses from clients. And we would talk a little bit more about it, but invariably it would come down to the client saying something like, well, probably going to look to retire at 60. And I would say something like, oh, sure, what money are you spending? How much money do you think you're going to need in retirement? We'd have these kind of conversations. And then I would go away, and me and my team, we would build them a financial plan. And we would then check in with that each year. And I think we had some really good results. I don't think we were doing anybody any harm at all. I think we were doing good. But the more I started to reflect on financial well-being and what that really means, just made me think, actually, I think with the knowledge that I have now around actually what constitutes well-being, I could possibly have gone that bit further with my client and had some different outcomes. Now, what I mean by that is, so, what is financial well-being might be a reasonable question to ask. And is it just a buzz marketing word? And I think it absolutely has been hijacked in some areas by large marketing firms with big budgets. But financial well-being at its core sits within overall well-being. And there's many different definitions, I think, of well-being. But the one that really resonates with me was some research carried out by the Gallup research with two people called Hoth and Rantner, if I remember right. I've probably got that wrong. But they identified there were 5 areas that constitute well-being. The first being career/having a purpose in life. The second one being social, so the quality of your social relationships, whether that's with family or friends. The third one being community well-being, so how well do you fit into your community, whether that's your local community, whether that's a sports club, whether that's work, whether that is faith-based. The fourth one being physical well-being, so physically, how well are you and how are you looking after yourself? And then the final one being financial well-being. So what is your financial well-being? Now, of itself, just having money, spoiler alert, is not going to make people happy, absent those other 4 things. Now, obviously, money is a contributor to those other 4 areas, but of itself, money is not the thing that's going to cause people happiness. And what do we do in our financial services world? We spend a lot of time talking to people about bloody money. We spend less time actually talking to them about them and their life and what's really important to them. So a colleague of mine, a guy called Chris Budd, who actually founded the Institute for Financial Wellbeing, wrote a book on this about 6 years ago. 5 years ago, 2016, whenever that is, 5 or 6 years ago. And he identified, along with some other US-based research, that there are 5 aspects to financial well-being. The first one being, how well do you know yourself? What is it that you're really looking for in life, and what makes a good life for you? The second one being in control of your daily finances. The third one being the ability to cope with financial shocks. The fourth one being having financial choices in life. And the fifth one being, I always call it not leaving a mess when you die, but basically making sure that you have got all your affairs in order as and when the end comes. Now, I'd like to think that most good financial advisors and financial planners deal with numbers 2, 3, 4, and 5 that I've just mentioned there. What I think historically we've done less well is actually really spent time getting under the skin of our clients and really working out what is important to them in life, and not just diving into the figures. So actually spending time having very meaningful conversations that are led by the clients, that have got nothing to do with our agendas, which involves the financial planner, financial advisor, or sometimes financial coach, being really expert in questioning and listening skills. And I think very often it's that's missing in our world. We're brimming with loads of technical knowledge. We can't wait to tell people, or we can't wait to solve their problems, but we haven't really got to the nub of the issue about what it is that makes our clients tick. And I think a classic is going back to me saying how I used to do it, as a client would come in and say, I'd like to retire at 60. Like, well, where has this notion of 60 come from? Because it's in the employee handbook? Is that because it's when your parents retired? Is that because that friend of yours at the tennis club is going to retire at 60? Or is it what you really want to do? And rarely do people know that they actually have much more of a choice in this than they actually realize. And I think it's our job to really try to unearth all of these facets that make a good life for our clients. And I don't think many of us are doing it as well as we can at the moment, but that is starting to change.
I've got to say, Ruth, I think that is the best definition of financial well-being I've ever heard. It's fantastic. If you're listening to this, you're like, well, why is Ruth telling us how she's trying to get financial advisors to do their job? It's because I've had so many messages. We're recording in January, by the way, from people like, it's new year, I'm going to get on top of my finances this year. And you all think you start with the numbers. You're the same as us. We don't start with the numbers. Let's do all this work first of all. So, Emily, it looked like you had a question there or something you wanted to interject with.
Yeah, I told you it would come to me, a good question, as soon as it started. I don't believe in giving anyone prior knowledge of my question. No, thanks, Ruth. That was really good, the way you took us through that, and a great explanation. But, one thing that comes to my mind is how to teach this, and not how to teach this, but also who to teach it to, because I've got a 12-year-old daughter who is obviously pretty obsessed with Instagram and TikTok and all these influencers who look amazing and obviously are earning money by doing something that, may or may not be fulfilling, but it's certainly making them money. And they're very influenced by this. They also want to earn money so that they can have the nice clothes and go on the nice holidays and they want this dream life that we all know in IRL doesn't really exist. But are these children or younger people at the right point in their life to take on board what you're saying about this? Because I have a hunch that I think that there's a journey that we have to go through, that we have, for example, I left university and went straight into a job in the city. If I'd stopped to think about it, it didn't fit me. I really just went for that job because I knew it was going to make me lots of money. And it took me a while to realize, actually didn't take me long to realize, but it took me a while to actually do something about it when I realized that it was actually making me very unhappy. And I think that's the same for a lot of people, is that they still do this thing that chases the bucks early doors, but then they reach a point. Now, is there a sort of optimum age or an optimum life stage that people are at when they actually can properly take on board this message about it's not just about the money? That's a long question.
You know what? I think you're absolutely right in terms of that being a journey. And, I remember myself being in my 20s and, status symbols. We go at that age, I think, for extrinsic motivations take over. So how do we look to other people? What clothes are we wearing? What car are we driving? Where are we going on holiday? And, social media, the media, capitalism, it all feeds into this, doesn't it? It really does. And I think it's a very enlightened young person that recognizes the things that truly make them happy. I always reflect that, crazily, I actually trained as a nurse when I first left school. So kind of different, but similar to finance, I think, in some respects. All about people skills, I guess, in some shape or form. But I always remember, you earn bugger all as a nurse, then you still earn bugger all as a nurse now in many respects. But, when you're 19, it's your first job, and you want some face moisturizer, you buy the cheapest face moisturizer you can pretty much find, can't you? Then as you start to earn a little bit more money, you start notching up, don't you, with the expense of the face cream that you're buying. And it's a really silly example, but really, does it make that much difference? And in the same way as, if you've got very little money, you're happy down the pub with a pint and a pie, aren't you? As you start to earn more money, I remember in my 40s finding myself in ridiculously expensive restaurants with people I didn't like very much, spending a fortune on a Wednesday night. Like, what the hell was that about? Now, I now realize that it's the people I'm out with, not the swanky restaurant I might be eating in, that makes it a good evening or not. And I kind of think we have to go on a little bit. For me, it feels like we have to go on a little bit of a journey for that. That's not to say, I think, that the more that you as a parent, me as an aunt, my niece, my 10-year-old niece wants to be a plastic surgeon. That's interesting. Why does she want to be a plastic surgeon and not just a doctor? I think we all know the answer to that. The more I think that we can try to talk about what actually makes you happy, I think can only help. But I do think it is a passage of time. I think it's also the onus on us, the more that we can try to get this message out. Can you imagine if we could change the financial services industry to realize that actually our role in life is to actually make sure people lead happy and contented lives and don't just accumulate wealth just for the sake of it? Wouldn't that be a great day? But I think that's going to be quite an uphill battle, to be perfectly honest. I think there's a few vested interests in that somehow, but that's my noble challenge. But yeah, I think it's a tough one, Emily. I think we have to go there sometimes.
Yeah, and I think in the Institute for Financial Wellbeing, we do talk a lot, don't we, about how to measure it? Because obviously, talking about accumulating wealth, we measure it by how much money have you got, funds under management, all of this. But the age-old problem is, how do you measure happiness? And that's, a really interesting debate. But yeah, one for another day, I think.
I think it is one for another day. Just one thing to mention on that, Emily, is that we are hoping to create a measurement tool at the Institute to help certainly financial advisors and financial planners when they're talking to their clients to measure the improvement in their clients' happiness that they're achieving with the work that they're actually doing over time. So I think that's kind of fascinating. And of course, happiness is a multifaceted thing. There's this fascinating piece of research, if I can remember it, called set point theory. And what set point theory tells us is happiness is made up of 3 parts. 50% of it comes from our DNA. So that's what we were born with. 10% comes from our circumstances. And 40% comes from our thoughts and beliefs. Now, if you just think about that for a moment, that's fascinating, isn't it? So take us as people who work in various facets of the financial services industry. At the moment, well, we can't do anything much about people's DNA. Let's put that to one side. But what we spend our time doing is talking to people about the 10%, their circumstances. So what have you got? How much do you earn? What kind of house do you live in? Can we help you move up the career ladder? Can we help you buy a bigger house? Can we help you think about buying a car? Can we help you get your children for university? Whatever it might be, it's circumstances, isn't it? What if, in fact, we spent more time talking to our clients about their thoughts and beliefs around money, bearing in mind that that accounts for 40% of what makes people happy? We could have a massive impact if we combined conversations around thoughts and beliefs as well as circumstances. For me, that is an incredibly compelling piece of research. And there's been evidence that backs this up, that in Illinois, there was some research done into lottery winners, and state lottery winners were found to be no happier 12, 24 months down the line than non-winners. Because what happened? They had this thing called hedonic adaptation, whereby they were comparing themselves to different people because now all of a sudden they've got money and their aspirations in life had gone up.
Were they buying different face cream, Ruth?
I bet they probably did, Julie.
Yeah.
Having plastic surgery, probably.
Plastic surgery in swanky restaurants.
So I'm just curious at this point, Michelle, I know you've been sitting there listening avidly, and I know that I can see you nodding away to everything that Ruth's saying. So what kind of reflections have you had so far?
Yeah, I think actually it's really interesting because I have had 2 conversations this week with 2 fairly new clients, to be fair. And you try to get to know them, you try to sort of dig down, and some of them are very guarded when they're talking to you. And actually, at one point with one of them, I said, okay, let's just ignore what you think your plan is, and let's just talk about what you want in your children. And towards the end of it, he just said to me, do you know what? He said, I've earned really good money for 10 years. He said, and I have nothing to show for it. He said, I thought I was having a really good time, but actually I wasn't. He said, and actually, I wish I had done things with that money that I believed I should have done, not what I wanted to do for everybody else. And I wouldn't be sat here now thinking I've only got 25 years to complete my plan for my children, because he now has children. And he was talking about sort of that lifestyle inflation, that the more he earned, the more he spent, the more he went out. And he said, I want to retire at 50. I don't want to wait till 55. So I need to have something set up so I can do that. But it was interesting. We had to let go of the figures. We had to push that to one side in order for him to actually get to that point. And I actually had a call just before this meeting today. A lovely lady, it's an air hostess. She said, all my life, I'm going to retire at 55. I'm going to take my lump sum. She said, I'm 55 in March. I don't want my lump sum, but I don't know what. She said, but everyone's telling me on flights, this is what I should be doing. And I should be moving this part of this pension into this one. And I said, well, how about we have a discussion about everything that you actually want to do? Let's ignore the pension.
Yeah.
She said, I've never thought of it like that. And that was quite strange, because it was just before this, this call. And so that's two in a very short space of time that thought they were sort of thinking about the numbers. And I just think my experience with clients is the more you get to know them, the more you have a relationship with them in talking to them, and they tell you about their children and their family and everything else, the more you can actually help them.
Yeah.
But yeah, totally on board with everything you're saying, Ruth, and I actually love it, because it's actually the first time I've sort of heard you speak sort of close about rather than a distance. So everything I believe in. So yeah, fantastic.
One interesting element of the don't just think about the numbers thing I find with clients is that...
Hello, Percy. Right, so Percy the dog's back.
I'll come back to that.
Okay, so that's Emily's dog, who we're all now familiar with. Ruth, can I just check my understanding then? Because what you were saying is, tell me if I've got this right, because what I'm hearing is, I had the same issue that you had, that you sit down with people and I get really sick of hearing this goal. I want to retire at 60 and I need £2,000 a month. That's not a goal. I've said it before on the podcast. I'm saying it again. That's not a proper goal. And it's like, as advisors, and then maybe the people that have been messaging me to say, I'm going to get on top of my money this year, is we sit down and we come up with these goals. I'm doing air quotes, people, of what we think is a goal, is the £62,000 a month, whatever. Does financial well-being sit underneath, sort of drilling down as saying that's not really a goal, and drilling down to find out what the real objectives are, by understanding what are my values? How do I live those values? Because if I live those values, then I live a fulfilling life and I've been true to myself. Does that make any sense, or have I just rambled?
No, I think it does makes absolute sense, because kind of goals are finite, aren't they? And then what happens? I think that we've probably all seen it in family and friends, and as well as clients. That I always remember a friend of mine, lovely friend, worked really, really hard in her career to actually become a professor, and she became a professor probably in her at about 50. And then she got there and realized actually didn't make any difference. It didn't make her any happier. It didn't bring her any more fulfillment. And it's that kind of classic thing, isn't it? It's a bit of a cliche, but we tend to discount the journey in pursuit of the goal. And I think that very often that's where the mistake, if I can even call it a mistake, is made, because we think that once we get to that particular point, something's going to change and we're going to feel different. But in fact, unless we spend a little bit of time really discovering what's important to ourselves, and so that does play into values, it does play into really reflecting on when are we at our happiest, what are the things that we do on a day-to-day basis that bring us joy. We're recording this, as you said, Julie, just at the start of the new year, and I don't know about you guys, but I've had loads of those how to set your goals for 2023. But one that has resonated with me is, and I think this is from a guy called Tim Ferriss, who is a significant podcaster, And I don't listen to everything that he does, but I thought this was a really interesting one. His suggestion was that you look back over your diary for the last 12 months and have a sheet of paper in front of you with what were the things that brought me joy, that were positives, and what were the things that I did that were drains or were negatives.
Oh, I love this idea.
Yeah, just quickly skim through your diary.
Oh, yeah.
And I kind of did it, and it was really interesting. Very quickly, all the positives were around spending time with friends, doing things that were mind expanding, or I was learning, or I was growing, hanging out with people that were saying things that I found interesting, being outside, being by the sea. I enjoyed kind of exercising, and the things that were real drain, there were a few worky type things that I just thought, oh God, yeah, I could feel my stomach sink when I reflected back. So I think there's some exercises like that we can do that start to just like, none of us think about this until we think about it. I know that sounds like a really silly thing to say, but what does make you happy? And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we grind through. And sometimes, let's be honest, it is bloody necessity. We've just got to get on with it. And it is the stage of life we're at. I get that. But I think if we can actually really work out the things that make us happy, and rather than just saying yes to stuff, get a little bit more discerning around the things you say yes to. I think some of these things, I don't know whether I'm really answering your question, Julie, but I think it's a way of just really uncovering what are the things that are important to us. And it may well be, I just love being in 3 nights a week watching Netflix.
I'll take that 7 nights a week, thanks.
There you go. Perfect. Happy woman.
All right, quick question then. Jennifer, you've been sitting there quietly soaking it all up. So I'm going to put you on the spot now, Jennifer. Welcome to the team. If I asked you to open up your diary for 2022, what do you think's going to jump out of last year's diary that you're like, yes, that brought me joy and made me feel fulfilled?
Probably my wedding. I think that's definitely something that's up
We
there.
can't make this a daily event, Jennifer.
No, I actually went through my diary last week and I did a bit of a kind of year in reflection. And I went through what my achievements were for the year, both personally and for business, as well as the things that I'd kind of missed the mark on or what I thought I'd missed the mark on. But importantly, I went through what I called kind of the magic moments of the year. So these were the actual moments of what you remember and what brought you joy. And that was really quite significant because going through that, very few of them related to business and very few of them related to money. The most things about it was either getting married or days off or events. And I find that really, really useful to do because it kind of puts everything into perspective of what your goals actually should be. And I know we're all quite, number oriented people given the career that we do, but it's really hard to measure how far you've grown if you can't put some form of metric on it.
This is my chance to this is the annual plug for your best year yet. So every year I do mention this book, and it's around about this time of year. If you haven't already bought it, you need to go and buy Your Best Year Yet. I think it's 7 or 8 questions, and just work through them and look back at the year that's gone and the year ahead. You can do it any time of year. I just happen to do it at this time of year. But I like your idea, Ruth, of going back through the diary, because what it's making me think about as well is Catherine and I did an episode 42, which was how to DIY a financial plan. And it was that we had this idea of it was sat nav, and we were going on a scenic route around Europe with the idea that it was all about the journey rather than the destination. We didn't have a bloody clue where we were going because that's me and Catherine, but we were going to take in some sights and sounds along the way. So it sounds to me like, your suggestion there of flicking back through the diary would be a good starting point before people are actually thinking about the numbers. Have you got any other tips for people that are listening? Exercises they could do, I think conversations they could have with a significant other or friends to help them start to explore what financial well-being means for them?
I think it is really exploring. I mean, particularly if anybody listening is in a partnership, I think it's really, if it's important within the relationship to really work out what may be shared goals, but what may be independent goals that you would like to work towards. I'm using the word goals, aren't I? I'm just like shot myself right in the foot there. But what is it that ultimately you're looking for? I'm not really answering your question very well there, Julie, because I'm thinking about what could we suggest that people do. And I'm thinking that there's got to be some good starter for 10 questions for people to reflect on, hasn't there? And I can't think what those might be off the top of my head. I'd like to think that there were some, I think there are some kind of coaching cards that can help people think through what a good life looks like for them. I'm unable to put my hand on such a thing at the present moment.
That's okay, that regularly happens to me, Ruth. Right. Things that have just popped into my head is the Wheel of Life. Has anybody seen the Wheel of Life?
Yeah, perfect.
Love the Wheel of Life.
Right. I'll put a link to the Wheel of Life in the show notes. People are making a little note now so I don't forget. All right. Who fancies telling the listeners all about the Wheel of Life? Oh, Michelle, off you go.
So Wheel of Life, it was something I often seen but had never actually done until last year. And you get sort of a wheel and it's divided into different sections of your life. So I think you have like most physical and you have your home life. So you have lots of areas of life and you colour in where you think you are sort of on a scale. I think it's 1 to sort of 10, isn't it? And then you see what your wheel looks like. Does it look like a wheel or does it look very distorted and would never go round? And really shows you the areas of your life you'd like to work on. And I think actually seeing the shape for me was really important because you can really see what areas you're ignoring, what you should be working on, and actually what's important to you. If you look at that area and it's very low and you think that's actually something that's really important to me, like home, being at home with your family. If that's very far down, then you've got some work to do. And I think sometimes we can be so fixated on a goal, we miss the journey and we miss the memories. So that wheel helps you kind of put that into perspective because it's all there in front of you. And there's no numbers. It is just, you can enjoy colouring it in too. But, I think it's a very good visual aid. So people who work very well visually, that's the way of doing it.
Yeah.
You can make it bespoke to yourself, can't you? Because like I just pulled it up here and they've got areas like recreation, health, finance, career, family, personal growth, spirituality, and relationships. Obviously, you can pick out your own, can't you?
I think that's
a useful
exactly
exercise.
Right. And I think it's, thank you for jogging our memories there on that, Julie. And it, going back to the 5 components of well-being at its kind of most stark, really, just the 5 from which you can build other things out, such as spirituality and what have you. It is really interesting because I'm sure we've all come across or know people that all they do is work. So their life is totally out of balance when you think, to the detriment of their physical health, the relationships. They've got no sense of community, and that is not leading to a good life. However, some people get an awful lot of pressure out of working, so you can't say one thing is right for anybody. As you say, Emily, it really does need to be personalized to what's important, and it's going to evolve over time.
Do you know what as well is somebody did the Wheel of Life with me the other week and many lessons I took away from it. But if you've not heard about this before, we'll put a link. Go and play it as a game, either with a partner or with a friend, because I think there was one aspect on the wheel, I can't remember what it's called, but I thought I score really lowly on that. I'm really rubbish at that. It was probably health and looking after myself. But then the other person started questioning me and started drawing information out of me. And I thought, oh, actually, I think I maybe have scored myself a 3 out of 10. But then once they probed a bit more on it, I'm actually scoring maybe a 7 or an 8. And it's having, it's very difficult to have a sense of perspective. I think when you're doing exercises like this on your own, which I think it can be really helpful just to team up with someone else to do it.
Yeah.
Can I just say that if you're doing it with a partner, just be really careful. Because I had a little conversation with my husband a few weeks ago about how we saw our retirement, and we talked about the things that we'd like to do in our retirement. And I think this kind of exercise can throw up differences. So you just need to be prepared and in the right place to have a deep and meaningful conversation.
I've got an exercise that I use with my clients. It's about expectations. And it's where they each go away and write down, and I use it as they're building up to retirement, so that they then come together and compare notes and to see if there's any deviation. I did it with one client where he lives in Liverpool and he was planning on moving to the Wirral when he retired. He hadn't discussed this with his partner. And people from Liverpool can feel really funny about the wirral. So he went back and had the conversation with her. It turned out they could get the kind of house he wanted with the garden that he wanted, but it would be in Liverpool because they'd be divorced if they moved to the Wirral. So I think it's about having this communication beforehand so you don't, because otherwise, think about it, you're working all your life, you're saving all this money to get to retirement. Two of you haven't talked about it, and you get there and it turns out you want completely different things. Michelle, I know you've got a story about this one.
I've actually got a friend, well, people who did that, and they actually did get divorced because they realised after having the conversation that actually they had nothing in common. They had worked all their lives to build this fund of money, and they wanted to do completely opposite things. So yeah, they actually got divorced a year later, and they're now happier than they have ever been.
Hang on, how does this help Emily though? Because we're sitting here encouraging people to have the conversation. Emily, you're coming from the point of view, don't have the conversation.
Well, I think it's important to have the conversation. I just think choose the right time to have the conversation, be in the right frame of mind. Because I sort of stumbled upon it when we were driving somewhere in the car, and I suddenly thought, hang on a minute, I don't think we're looking at having the same kind of retirement here. And then I can't believe that, we have been together about 15 years. But the thing is, you get married, you find your partner in your 20s or 30s, you're not talking about what you want your retirement to look like when you're in your 50s, 60s or whatever. You can't plan that far ahead. But it did strike me that, he has been putting money into pensions for a long time. He's built a great pension provision, but it seems to me he doesn't actually want to enjoy it when he retires. He probably wants to sit quietly in his armchair, watch sport, and hand a big pot over to the children when we pop off. Well, that's kind of not my plan. I will happily spend his pension because I will be traveling a lot, going on some very nice holidays and living a little bit. So I might be doing it with someone else.
Well, fortunately, we've got a few years for the two of you to try and resolve this between you and reach compromise, haven't we?
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, bringing it back to financial well-being, though, and not Emily's marriage, which is a regular feature on the podcast. As we've just kind of rambled on, Ruth, I think I would be interested to hear what your vision is for what this could look like going forward. Let's say we fast forward 10 years in the future. What do you hope will be different as we embed this idea of financial well-being?
I was at a conference about 18 months ago, and I was sitting on a panel, and people were asking questions about how do we see the future of financial services, financial planning. And I said, as part of the panel, I think the business of the future is actually going to be a tech business that happens to do financial planning. I now actually think differently. I actually think the business of the future is going to be a well-being business that happens to do financial planning. And I just think that slight change in the way that we view what we do is actually potentially massive. So that would be my big, hairy, audacious goal. My BHAG there, Julie, is that I would love to actually get people to stop and remember why we do the job we do, or we should be doing in the first place, why people bother to go to work to earn money, to accumulate money, to buy stuff. It's ultimately to make ourselves happier and provide a better society that we can all live in. And, we've lost that somewhere along the line, haven't we? Hyper-capitalism has just totally put pay to any idea that we're leading a life of fulfillment and contentment, not to mention what's going on in the world and the climate at large. So, I think this is the zeitgeist. And I think that the more enlightened financial planners and advisors and coaches are actually really getting this message. And more importantly, our clients are waking up for it. They want something different. They want to have different conversations. Imagine if all you do as a financial advisor is talk to clients about their money. You're going to have some really unpleasant years when you're talking about, well, the market's down. Right. Okay. Well, we all know we're not really magicians. There's nothing we can do about that. And those that pretend they can, I think they're living in the last century. But what if we had meaningful conversations with our clients about what their future life looks like or could be like? and then help them with the financial tools and planning that's available to enable them to get there. That's such a much more rewarding job. And may I say, actually something that's probably much more appealing for women, both as our clients, but also to come and work with us in this amazing profession. So I've got some really high hopes that I think by taking a financial wellbeing approach, we can unlock something that's been sadly lacking within financial services for a huge number of years.
Oh, I will absolutely love it if this is what it's like in 10 years' time.
Wouldn't it be great?
Oh, it would be amazing. So obviously, I know that we have quite a lot of financial advisors that listen to us as well. So Ruth, for the financial advisors that are listening and they're thinking, oh my God, I did not know this existed. How do I find out more?
Yeah. So please just Google the Institute for Financial Wellbeing, go to our website. We're currently rebuilding our website, but there's one up there at the present moment that's going to give you all the information that you need to know. We run 3 events a month. You can come along to 1 or 2 for nothing to just get a sense of what it's all about. And we have incredibly interesting speakers. We have coaches and financial planners who are all sharing ideas. We do research. We offer individual membership. We also offer corporate membership to firms. We do an audit of a firm to enable them to start their financial well-being and bring it into their business. So there's stacks going on. So have a look at the Institute for Financial Wellbeing. We'll put the link in the show notes. Thanks for zipping that across, Emily. Or if you want to have a chat with me personally, I'm on LinkedIn or Twitter. So just drop me a line and let's have a chat. But yeah, we'd love to have as many of you come along as would like to do so.
No, well,
Of course,
the more we
a conference. Yes, Emily, we've got a conference in May. I think it's the 23rd of May.
23rd, 24th, yeah.
In Bristol. It was a really good do last year. We've got a host of really interesting speakers. It's a really packed agenda, and a party the night before. That's a great way to get a good sense for what we're about.
Definitely recommend it. And the early bird finishes, well, probably finished by the time this podcast goes out.
Partying the night before. I'm not sure on the wisdom of that one. In the show notes as well. Right. Wow. What a whistle-stop tour of financial well-being. I've got to be honest, I didn't know if we would be able to define this and give people meaningful information to go away and action it. But thanks to you, Ruth, we have. So you're an absolute legend. So thank you for that. Now, Ruth, we are the curious type in the cafe, which is code for we're dead nosy. All right. And so at the end, we like to ask people a little random question just to get a better understanding of you. So we're curious about either what are you reading just now, or what was the last book that you read?
Good question. I really enjoy reading. I read and I listen on Audible, but can I have 2?
Since it's you, Ruth, and I've read some of the books you've recommended in the past, so I know you're good for a book rec.
Thank you. Well, the 2 I'm going to mention at the moment is the first one is a kind of worky kind of book, and it's called The Good Ancestor by a guy called Roman Krznaric. I think he's from Polish derivation. And he's a modern day philosopher that basically is talking about this subject of the fact that we're also short-termism in our thinking. And that's very much what we see with capitalism and hyper-capitalism. But in order for us to move forward as communities and as a world, we need to get back to long-term thinking. Just take the NHS as an example. When it was set up in the 40s, what an incredible idea was birthed. The fact of the matter is, though, nobody's thinking long-term now. So we've got something that's like dying on its feet. But somebody at some point did think long term, the same way as people who build a cathedral. They're not thinking about, well, let's knock something up in the next 3 years. This is something that's going to take tens of years to build. So it's a fascinating way of trying to get us as human beings to think more long term and actually think about seven generation thinking. So thinking about not just our children, not just our grandchildren, but great. What legacy are we leaving for people with the decisions we're making? So that's a goodie, and actually much more easily digestible than I may have made it sound. And then the second one will appeal to you, possibly, Julie, as as a Scot. It's a book called Young Mungo by Douglas Stewart. His first book was Shuggie Bain. I don't know if any of you have read that, but
That's the one you recommended to me.
Right, really tough read. His follow-up, Young Mungo, oh my God. So it's about, I'm listening to this on Audible, I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and it's about these two young boys, 15 and 16. One's a Protestant, one's a Catholic, growing up in Glasgow. They fall in love. This is kind of in the 80s, and just the prejudice and violence that they are surrounded by. It's beautifully written. I'm a little bit worried it's going to have a horrible ending at the moment, but honestly, it's bloody brilliant. Fantastic writer.
Oh yeah, I can see all the tension in there. I'm sure Jennifer can as well. All the ways that one can go wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, they're two brilliant book recommendations. Again, we'll put links to them in the show notes as well. So it just remains for me to say thank you very, very much, Ruth, for giving up your time and coming talking to us today.
It's been great fun. Thanks for asking me, Julie, and lovely to share the sofa with you, Jennifer, Michelle, and Emily. Thank you very much.
Yeah, ladies, thank you for coming along and joining in as well. But until next time, take care, everybody.
Bye for now.